Susan, it's lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Maria.
Fantastic. Now, listen, I don't know where you are at the moment because I know you've got a home, you've got a pied-à-terre in Canada, you've got a place in the UK. Where are we speaking from today?
The UK.
UK, wonderful. And you've
Yes.
got lovely backdrop if anyone's watching on video. Very, very, very nice backdrop there.
Reminds me of the travel that I can no longer do. The
Yes. Well,
Japanese.
at
Yeah.
time of recording, you're right. We can't travel. Fingers crossed that by the time this goes out, we'll change. Let's see. Let's see. But I tantalized the audience in the introduction by saying that I'm going to ask you to share your past with us, and I hope that you're willing to do that. And it is like a movie story. Tell us the listener what happened. What was the story?
The story is not a short one, that's for sure. But basically, I suffered from worthlessness and perfectionism, I think, from the time I can remember. So thanks to having a perfectionist mother, I got the message by the time I was about 4 years old that nothing I ever did was going to be good enough. And so throughout that first 10 or 11 years of my life, the burden on a child of trying to be all things to all people all the time and never succeeding, it was just absolutely too much for me. And I remember sitting in bed one night and making a conscious decision and saying, okay, I've given it everything I have tried, and it's not going to work. I don't belong. I just felt that, the universe had made a mistake, that I wasn't supposed to be on the planet because I just couldn't seem to do anything right, in my opinion. And I chose that night. I made a decision that if, this wasn't going to work, I'd tried for like almost 11 years. I wasn't going to play anymore. And so I decided to check out, so to speak, but check out in a different way than most people would think. So I found alcohol to numb the pain of my existence, which when I think about it now, it makes me want to cry. It makes me so sad to think about a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old whose existence is so painful that they don't want to be there. And I found alcohol to numb that pain. And my parents didn't drink. So when you're 11 and you want alcohol, there's only one place to get it, and that's out on the street. So I went out on the street and became a part of street gangs, and all in pursuit of more alcohol and drugs to numb the pain. So I think I was 16 and I graduated to motorcycle gangs. And so I spent, I don't know how many years, at least 8 years as property of a notorious motorcycle gang, not the nice kind, the kind that's on the FBI most wanted list. So I spent a good number of years property of a motorcycle gang. I've been shot and stabbed and beaten and left on the side of the road for dead, and experienced just about every kind of abuse you can imagine over the years. And then I finally, with the help of my father, who sent me an airline ticket, I managed to escape the gang, which is a miracle in and of itself. And what I didn't realize at the time, which I absolutely do in hindsight, was that I managed to escape hoping I was going to find this fantastic world, flowers, butterflies, everyone was going to love me. It was all going to be perfect. And yeah, no, that's not what happened. I took me with me, and I don't know how, but somehow that 2 years after I escaped the gang were even worse than being property of the gang. I just couldn't function in normal society. I look in the mirror and all I could see were the horrible things that happened in the past. And so I drowned that sorrow in alcohol and drugs. And then of course I would do stupid things, and I'd wake up in the morning, and it just was this vicious cycle. So I decided that I would put myself and everyone else out of our misery, our collective misery. And I spent 2 years trying to kill myself, actively trying to kill myself, not telling people, just trying to do it. I would do stupid things like walk home from a bar in a bad neighborhood at 2 a.m. in the morning, just hoping that someone would come along and try and mug me or something. And I took all kinds of pills and tried to drink and drug myself to death. And as if I needed more proof of my worthlessness, I was a failure at that too. And I don't mean to make light of that. I'm certainly not making light of that. But you have to understand, in my mind at the time, I was so worthless. I was so devoid of any value whatsoever. I was so convinced that I was a failure and didn't belong to be on the planet. And yet what should have been the easiest thing for me to do, I couldn't achieve that correctly either. So yeah, so it was 20 years, 20 years of that, 10 years of the pain beforehand, and then 20 years of living on the street, homeless off and on,
Oh my God.
abused, shot at. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm emotional listening to it, and I was emotional when you told me the story originally. In fact, I've been struggling to hang on to my emotion because this is
Yeah.
just incredible. An 11-year-old, incredible. Oh my goodness! I'm sorry, Susan.
No, I mean, listen, I've got chills and goosebumps and my
Yeah.
eyes, Maria, don't forget, I have two children that I raised as well, not mine, but stepchildren that I raised from the ages of 9 and 11. So when I talk about, my life back then, I'm actually thinking and trying to imagine, and it just,
Oh, huge,
yeah,
huge.
yeah.
So many questions come out of that, Susan. And I mean, thank you for being so open, first of all, because that's not easy. It's not an easy thing to put out there. I do think it's a film. It's certainly a book. Anyway, let me just get myself together. Why are you now able to share that story?
Well, I think, it's not something I ever really wanted to intentionally hide, although if I'm very honest, I lied for many years. I would go and work with clients and they would ask me about my background and my history, and I made it up. I mean, I did. It's taken me years and will continue to take me years to dismantle, to rewire this worthlessness thing that operates in me. And I was so convinced for so many years that if anybody actually found out about my past, in my mind, I'm not saying this is logical. It actually sounds funny when I say it out loud, but in my mind, this was a very real thing. I was terrified that they were going to like throw rotten fruit at me and, kick me out, and I would be ostracized, and, I would have no friends. It was a terrifying thought to me that people find out about this. The people pleasing, right? It didn't go away. All I did was drown it with alcohol and drugs for 20 years. It didn't go anywhere. So it was like when I came out of that, all of that stuff was still operating, and I was terrified. I'm the only person I think I've ever met that was actually afraid of people. And, I have a friend who's known me for many years, and she laughs. She tells a story. She says that in the early days when I was starting to recover from this, and it's true, I remember it. The only way I knew who people were was by the shoes they were wearing, because I went through life looking down. I couldn't even look at anybody because I was so sure that, I had this big L on my forehead, that they would look at me and instantly know that this was a worthless person. And it's taken a lot of work, and it's taken a lot of years to work on rewiring that worthlessness, that perfectionism. I had a whole laundry list of things that I needed to fix in myself and to gain that self-esteem and confidence. And the more confident, and actually it's how I got into what I do now. It's why I do what I do. It's all part of the lying in the beginning, if you will, or the hiding in the beginning, but doing what I do now. I was about 3 years into recovery, and I worked hard. I mean, I worked hard. I had no money, so I started with a book, and then I went to free workshops at the YWCA. And then as I started to save a little money, I signed up for community college, and then I signed up for university, and I studied everything you could possibly imagine. And I called it How to Be a Real Person training. So I was about 3 years into my How to Be a Real Person training, because see, I realized that what I knew, everything I believed, was wrong. It was all wrong. You don't need to be perfect to have people like you. There's no such thing as perfection, and I wasn't worthless. I mean, I had merit. I was really smart, incredibly creative. There's all these things and I had to rewire all of this. And I was about 3 years in, and I realized that I was not alone. Because, human beings, we have this condition. We think it's just me, right? It's only me, that nobody else feels this way or suffers this way. But what I started to realize was, it wasn't just me. My story is absolutely unique to me. But the feelings, the belief system that I had, the pain I was feeling, it wasn't unique. And I knew at that point, I knew that I had to take what I was learning and I had to share it with people, because they needed to know that there was a different way, that they could be productive and happy and have good relationships, and they deserved all of this. So I had to find a way to share, but at the same time, I was still struggling with that worthlessness and that confidence. And so I went to university full time for adult education, and I learned how to design. I learned how adults learn, and I learned how to design learning interventions that allowed them to actually shift their mindset and their behavior. And so I've actually been sharing sort of my story for a really long time, but under false pretenses, if you will. I've been calling it leadership and sales training and lately emotional intelligence. But the truth is, I've been studying emotional intelligence and applying it to my own life since way before Daniel Goleman even coined that phrase. So that's why now, since I've been doing it for all these years anyway, and now more than ever, I think that we need this. We need to know we're not alone. We need to know that we can have the life that we want, that we deserve happiness. We need to know that there is no such thing as perfection, and we need the skills to get better at what we do so we can be confident and happy and proud. And I think it's been just in the last few years that I've actually reached the place in my journey where I've said, okay, doesn't matter what anybody thinks, there's a greater purpose here. And so let me just take the scariest leap ever and say, yeah, I get it. I understand, because I've been there.
Yeah, and I've seen you grow so much since you've started to share this. And I was in the room when you first shared it with people who've known you for years, and you told it from a third party point of view, as if you were talking about somebody else, and then you said that person was me, and you could hear a pin drop when it was like, and mouths opening, and it was incredible. And also I remember when I first started working with you, and that I met you and you were so strong and so confident, and yet you were so vulnerable. There was something there. And I think now you come from such an authentic place. And I'm sorry, you're supposed to be talking, I'm supposed to be interviewing you, and I'm giving you my synopsis. But I think it's incredibly powerful to say to someone, you may have started badly, things maybe have gone wrong, but you can turn it around. And
Absolutely.
my goodness, did you turn it around? My goodness, absolutely incredible. So I think also now you must be relieved that there's no fear of being found out anymore, because you're upfront about it.
Well, I wrote 2 books about it, so it's not like I'm actually trying to hide it anymore. Um, but if I'm honest, there's still the little twinge there, because you're right. Anybody who knows me knows I'm very strong, and I've got, because of all of my life experiences and everything I just told you about the years of study in trying to fix myself, I've got an enormous amount of knowledge and experience and skill around this. And I am a very strong person, but I'm also extremely sensitive at the same time. And it does actually create a bit of a problem, because the person that people see in front of them, as you said, the person that the people see in front of them, they often can't reconcile the story I tell to that person. And so one of the other reasons that I want to share this story with people is I worry now at this phase that people look at me, and I've had people say to me, I was afraid to meet you. And I'm like, and of course my mind immediately goes to something it shouldn't go to. But I'm like, well, why? What would make you afraid to meet me? And they say, well, you're such a strong character, and you really know what you're doing. You really know what you're talking about. And at first that really knocked me off balance. I was really upset. That old worthlessness came back and said, oh, I got to make myself small. I got to pretend I don't know what I'm doing. I got to fit in. And then I thought, no, no, everything they're saying is true. Yes, I'm a very strong person, but I'm also extremely sensitive, and I've been through a lot, and I've managed to recover. And yeah, I do know what I'm talking about. And I do have a massive amount of knowledge and experience. But excuse me, I earned this, you know? So I guess the change, Maria, it's about owning it now rather than apologizing for it. Does that make sense?
I love that. I love that. Owning it rather than apologizing. Absolutely. Really love that. So tell me, how do you apply that to businesses and organizations? What is it that they take from this?
Aha. Well, this is one of the unique things that I bring. You know, you can't identify something unless you've suffered it yourself. So people are like an odd mirror. Mm. The things that we suffer from, we tend to identify in other people. It's like a mirror. So because I've had such a vast personal experience, like I said, what I noticed really early on, about 3 years into my recovery, was that low self-esteem and lack of confidence isn't just an issue for a few people. It's a pandemic, and has been a pandemic of massive proportion for a really long time. Now, I'd have to look up the name of the man who did the global study, but there was a global study done in 2012. His name was Joe. I'd have to look it up, and I can for you. And he found that 92% of the world population admitted to suffering with low self-esteem and confidence. Right. Yeah. So now you put that in an organization. You put somebody who is lacking confidence in an organization. You put them in a position, and it doesn't matter if they're in human resources. You put them in a position in HR where they need to coach people. They need to provide feedback, but they're lacking confidence. So now they need to go and coach or provide feedback to a leader. But the first thing that goes through their mind is, well, you know, who am I to provide feedback to that person? Name any position in an organization. Agile has taken over the world. It's not just an IT methodology anymore. You know, entire organizations are working under Agile methodology. Agile is not just a process, it's actually a mindset. And you need a great deal of confidence to be able to stand up in front of your peer group and share ideas. You know, so this whole thing of confidence and self-esteem, it's it's a pandemic, it's global. More people suffer from it than what you would imagine. And I often describe it, I often say confidence is actually quiet. Okay, confidence is quiet. Lack of confidence or low self-esteem is not. And it comes out in one of two ways. It comes out in the very passive, the very staying in the background, the not willing to speak up, the not willing to ask for what one wants, the not willing to share feelings, ideas, knowledge, or it comes out in arrogance. And I know better than everybody else. And I'm going to yell louder than you so that you listen to me, because I don't want you looking behind the facade to see that I'm really feeling. So I always say confidence is actually quiet. You know, if it's not quiet, then it's not confidence, it's something else. And I think everybody listening is probably thinking to themselves right now, oh, I know a few people who fit in that category. And the thing is, in organizations, in business, whether we talk leadership or whether we're talking associates doing a job, confidence, self-esteem is something that we all need. Otherwise, we're sabotaging the organization. All of your best ideas are left unheard because people are terrified to stand up to the person yelling the loudest, or they're afraid to share their ideas because, and something I understand very well, they're going to be laughed at, or they're going to be told they're wrong, or they're going to be told they're insignificant and they don't matter, so they stay quiet. So it touches just about every area in an organization. I can't think of any areas. I work with people, not things, and I see it consistently. You know, I can literally feel it in an audience. I can feel who's resonating and where the pain is. It's just so pervasive. And there've been plenty of studies that show that lack of self-awareness when it comes to emotional intelligence, self-awareness being the cornerstone and the pillar, when it comes to emotional intelligence, that lack of self-awareness is the biggest challenge facing organizations today. It's what's standing in their way of productivity, profitability, and success.
Wow. Wow. So much there that you've shared. My goodness, that was a masterclass in an answer to a question. I mean,
Sorry.
no, phenomenal. I loved it. I've written loads of notes. 92%. That is shocking.
It's huge.
Shocking. I also hadn't heard the description as you'd given it, you know, about how you see the low self-esteem, how it presents itself, and how confidence is quiet. I think you're absolutely right. You are so right. Love that. I shall be looking out for that now. And you're right. This lack of self-awareness. I also think it's interesting that you refer to the low self-esteem, lack of confidence as a pandemic. It's one that's with us. It's, in fact, it's endemic, isn't it? Because it's with us all the time.
It is.
Wow. So what can we do? How do you help organizations with that? I mean, that's huge.
Well, that is actually what I do. So, like I said, regardless of what we call it, I'll often go in. I was speaking to a sales academy last night about taking content and repurposing it, for virtual workshops, and not the what and the why, but rather the how, to teach people how to apply these things differently. But basically what I was giving them the confidence through strategies and techniques to be able to actually do this, so that they could sit there and say, you know what, I can do this. I know how to do this. And that's part of the value that I bring in whatever it is that I'm talking about. So I talk a lot about emotional intelligence. And one of the things that I find is there's always crying. And it's really interesting to see a group of aerospace engineers cry and hug each other, just because we've opened that door that makes it okay for them to look at their behavior and the impact that that has on other people. And once they realize that, it's shocking to them. So regardless of the subject matter, what I'm actually giving people is hope. I'm giving them confidence. I'm giving them the knowledge that they're not alone, that they're okay in this. And the amount of times, Maria, that I stand, in front of a group and I can see the look on the face, and the looks on the faces are almost, yeah, what would you know about this? And in my head, I think, okay, now I have to go there, and I end up telling the stories about me when I lacked confidence. And this is a true story, there was a time where I could not get in a lift. I couldn't get in an elevator if there were other people in the elevator or waiting to get in. I was so terrified that if I were only going to the third floor and they were going to higher floors, I might have to ask them to move out of the way to let me out. And that was just, I just couldn't bear the thought of putting somebody out and they were going to hate me, and, ridiculous what went on in my mind. But I tell that story and people go, oh, okay, she does get it. And once I can make that connection, people recognize they're not alone. And if nothing else, the fact that I'm standing in front of them gives them hope that if it's possible for me, it's possible for them. So in the middle of that, of course, there's always the strategies. I'm in the middle of a change management initiative right now. And while we're talking about skills and behaviors to help people through change, what I'm actually still doing, I'm giving them the confidence. I'm letting them know that it's okay that they don't feel good about change. I'm letting them know it's okay that they're struggling. So I take, I guess, all of my experiences, both the horrible ones in life, but all of the education and the study and what I've applied to myself, and I bring it to an organization, and it takes various forms depending on what the need is. So sorry, that's not a direct answer. And, I know we're not supposed to be jack of all trades, and I'm not saying I'm jack of all trades. I've just got a very wide experience, personal experience, educational experience, and business experience in the human condition and what we face in the workplace. And it applies to many different areas.
Yeah, I think your area is emotions there, emotional intelligence, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Susan, fantastic. I could talk to you all day. I can't believe our time has run out. So, can you leave us with one or two or even three, if you can be generous enough to do that, tips on how we can look after ourselves and our businesses?
Yes. So first of all, in your business, you need to take the long view, not the short view. So it's not, what do we need to do right now in the short term to get through, to fix? You really need to take the long view. I don't need to tell anybody in business that the landscape has changed. The generations in the workplace, they have different expectations. We need to take the long view. We need to understand our employees, and we need to make sure we're providing the development opportunities, the information and the support that they need to be successful and to raise their own confidence and self-esteem. That's how we keep them engaged, and that's how we retain them. So that's number one. In business, we've got to take a long view. Secondly, this is business and personal focused. we need to develop self-awareness. So, however you can do that, and I'll give you a couple of quick tips. Any assessment that you can do, any assessment, find one on the computer about emotional intelligence or confidence or stress or, personality, anything, and take it. Okay. You don't have to like the results, but take those results and really reflect on them. Are there areas that are true? Are there places where you can develop? The other thing that you can do, and you can do it with the assessment results or just do it, and it's a great way to raise confidence and raise self-awareness. Go and ask the people who are closest to you at work and home, and at work. What are my best qualities, right? Or what are my best skills or talents? It's an activity I did very early on, and I did repeatedly in my recovery from everything that I went through. And I think it's that one thing that really helped me develop the confidence, because we never see ourselves as other people see us, ever. So the self-awareness is absolutely key. And you may feel you're doing the right thing for you, but to be aware of the impact that's having on other people and on your business and personal life is absolutely huge.
Fantastic, Susan. Thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant. You are a very wise woman. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.